There have been many Batman bad guys brought to the big screen over the years, but there's only been one who's been asked to return in every sequel in its franchise. The Scarecrow is the only villain to appear in all three pieces of the Dark Knight trilogy, acting as a secondary antagonist in the first film, and a cameo in the second and third. A fact which should speak volumes about this actor's performance. He clearly left an impression on the movie makers and the movie audience alike. And that's because Cillian Murphy is the perfect Scarecrow, or more accurately, the perfect Jonathan Crane. Dr. Crane in these movies is a genuinely unwell and unsettling man. At first he can come off as a little bit strange, but later you realize that he's truly deranged. He's quite literally the inmate running the asylum. Even in normal situations, the character comes off as noticeably abnormal. The tone of his voice, his mannerisms, his very nature, it all just feels a little bit off. It's unnerving, but in a much more subdued and subtle way. You wouldn't necessarily alert the authorities upon meeting him, but you would actively avoid him following a first impression.
Having said that,
there were still several missteps and misfires with this villain. The problem isn't with how the character was depicted necessarily, but instead his place in the story. This variant of the villain is tragically misused, being set up as the movie's main antagonist before revealing him to be a mere pawn in the real Big Bad's plan. This change of pace makes the Scarecrow come off as a goofy underling more than an actual threat to the hero. And that point is furthered when in the climax, the Scarecrow is easily dismantled by Batman's girlfriend. Not exactly the grand send-off you'd want to see for this character. Granted, a taser shot on horseback was not something I thought I'd see, but it's not something I ever really was asking for either. Unfortunately, this problem also makes him an entirely too accurate adaptation of the antagonist, as the Scarecrow from the comics and the TV shows has met a very similar fate. The character is familiar to fans and casual viewers alike, but this character's almost never put on display the way he probably should be. The Scarecrow character feasts on fear, using one's own deepest, darkest terrors against them, manifesting his victims' anxiety, and giving audiences a better understanding of all these characters by digging deep into their psyches. That's some pretty heavy stuff. Even outside his own backstory and characterization, the Scarecrow works as a very strong plot device that allows audiences to gain a new perspective and deeper comprehension of the characters that they're watching or reading about. But more often than not, the character is not written to be the foe of focus, being instead utilized as an apprentice of another antagonist or just a narrative afterthought. It's really unfortunate because there are so many stories to be told using this villain, and yet there are next to no stories being told with this villain specifically. Though that's not the only issue with this character. For as great of a Jonathan Crane as Cillian Murphy is, his character arc never feels complete. His development is stilted very early on into his criminal career, and he doesn't ever fully feel like the Scarecrow. This feels like the villain in its infancy, like a Scarecrow the early years, except he never makes it past the prequel. At times, he can even come off as a little bit goofy, which on one hand is fine, because Jonathan Crane is a little bit goofy. That's a part of the premise of the character. He spent years of being overlooked and under-acknowledged. And while he may be unhinged, he's also unassuming. He's a frail and feeble man, who was often either the butt of jokes or the victim of abuse. And in spite of his blatant, bizarre demeanor, he's just not naturally intimidating. It's only through the use and abuse of fear itself that he's able to terrorize the citizens of the city. And here, I don't think he ever succeeds at that. Even with the use of the toxin, he's never taken seriously. When his victims are shown to be in peril, it's never of him. He's not playing into the use of fear gas. He's just using the fear gas. If you don't understand what I'm trying to say, let me try to put it like this. The Scarecrow doesn't just spray his victims and then leave them to their own devices. He terrorizes them. He manipulates their fear because he enjoys the power that he has over them. It makes him feel validated. This is an important element of the character that was lost in translation. Now sure, you can claim that he attempted to do this once, but for the most part, he's only shown using it as a diversion to mask his escape, which can be a function, but the fact that it's its primary function feels like a flaw. The movies never dive deeper into the psychological impact that Scarecrow's toxins can have on people, nor does it offer up unique visuals providing a better understanding of that character. The fear-based illusions don't seem to be tailored to their victims specifically. Instead, it just shows them generic spooky stuff. We get brief flashes of allegedly scary things, and people making goofy faces in response. For me, this was one of the movie's biggest mistakes, especially being a Christopher Nolan flick. He should have gone full Inception with this aspect of the story. One thing I've come to really dislike about this, in spite of all that I actually like about it, is that we never learn of this character's backstory or motivations. Unfortunately, a lot of Crane is very underestablished. Because of his place in the story, not much is known about him, as ultimately he's only a red herring put in place to mask the dual identity of Henry Ducard. We know precious little about this version of the character, and it sadly makes this villain feel like a glorified plot point in the grand scheme of things. We continue to see the character after in lesser cameos, but at no point does he ever feel fully realized. He's still the same goof hiding behind the power that he wields, but also doing next to nothing with that power. He doesn't effectively master fear, and that's definitely disappointing, because I'm pretty sure that Cillian Murphy could have done something really interesting if given the chance to showcase that side of the character. Don't get me wrong, I'm appreciative of the work that we've gotten. I like the character that audiences received, and even a lot of the direction of Christopher Nolan. And regardless of what I feel is a bit of a misuse of the character, there's no doubting that Cillian Murphy was great as the Scarecrow. But I can't help but feel that the character would have been even greater if given the right environment and the right presentation. Even with the issues with this iteration, I wouldn't argue that it's the greatest live-action portrayal of the character that we've ever gotten. It's still pretty great. With that being said, if you like this video and want to see me take a look back at The Dark Knight's Catwoman, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying,
"Cats are deadly animals."
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.
It's over. It's over.
Let's watch that mouse.